This is Death or Prison, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. We bring you stories of hope and encouragement.
Hello and welcome to the Death or Prison podcast, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. I am Johnny Branham. To my right, Mr. Elmo Golden. And to my left, we are continuing a conversation with Mike Ryan. When we left off on our first episode, you were walking us through a lot of prison sentences, a lot of escapes, a lot of turmoil. But it seemed like life was turning around. It was a romance, you got married, your daughter's back in your life. And then there was a couple that was living in your brother's house. Something happened. And in the next moment, you mentioned, I was charged with capital murder.
The day after I got to my brother's house, on a Tuesday, I took my daughter to school. The police reports say from 8:30 to 9:45, I was at the school in the morning, registering my daughter. The principal told the resource officer, watch this guy, because I had earrings, tattoos. She was nervous with me there. So he's talking to me, the resource officer. He says, Mike, we're doing a raffle here. Are you interested? And I looked at my daughter. I said, you want this? She said, yeah. So I bought a ticket, raffle ticket. He put the date and the time on this ticket. We know the murder happened during this time because a lady got out of her car next door to where the murder took place, was getting groceries, heard a bunch of shots and heard a scream and heard more shots. And she said, it's too early for shooting around here, and looked at the time. So the right time was documented. Well, I get charged with this. They run my record. They see my history. They think they hit a gold mine. I'm in jail. I got armed robbery and capital murder.
Now, when you say you're in jail, you're at the school and then you go back home and it's surrounded. They basically tell you, lay down or whatever they say.
This guy who's living with my brother, they come and pick him up after the murder. A guy was killed who knew the girl who's living with my brother and knew this guy. They were friends somehow or had association. I knew none of these people. I see the police come into the house and they take them. And a couple hours later, they come back. Me and Christina are just doing things around the house, minding our own. But I put two and two together. I figure out what's going on. They come back and take them again and leave. Well, I leave the house. I go 2 doors up to a neighbor that I actually know, and we're talking. And I see headlights coming down the street. A whole bunch of headlights. And I'm looking at it, but they're turning the headlights off on their cars as they're coming down, and they all screech to a halt in front of my brother's house. They jump out. Loudspeakers, Mike, come on out. I'm up here looking down the street at them, going, whoa. So I go in her house, and I sit on her couch, and I watch them. They're out there. My phone rings. He says, Mike, come on in. It's a Friday night. At this point, the investigation's been going on all week long. Now it's Friday.
So you see the police at your brother's house.
Yes.
And now you know that somebody has been murdered.
Yes.
What is taking place?
I pulled the guy aside and I said, what's going on here now? This is my brother's house. There's a lot of heat here. I got my daughter here. Well, and he wouldn't come out and tell me. He don't know me well enough to tell me he just committed a murder, but I could tell by his actions that something ain't right. An older gentleman was killed in the middle of a robbery, and they rummaged through his house and took whatever they took, and that ended up in the van, my brother's van, the property that was taken from the house. I told him, get the van out of here. I should have just stayed out of the whole situation and let them work it out. I told them, get the van out of here. So the investigation went on for that week, but they kept coming and getting these two and then releasing them. Lo and behold, they're telling them I done this. They're telling them I did this whole thing. So when they run my background and come up with my history, that coincides with this murder. This guy does robberies. This guy's got a history of this.
Violent
offender. We don't have to look no farther. We got him. And sure enough, here they come. On Friday night, when I told you they came down the street and hit my brother's house, I'm watching them. My phone goes off and it's the cop. He said, Mike, I need you to come in. I said, look, I got my daughter. I'll take care of her this weekend, get her taken care of, and then I'll come in Monday morning. He said, no, you come in now. My daughter's staying next door with them two little girls, so she's don't even know what's going on. Saturday morning, I wake up, I go next door and talk to my daughter, and I call Wendy. I said, Wendy, you got to come get her. Now I'm on the news, armed and dangerous. And it's every 15 minutes they're shooting me on the news. The neighbor lady said, Mike, take my car and go. So I get in her car, and I don't get a mile, and it's over with. Cops come out of the woodwork. I'm arrested. I'm taken to county jail. I sit in the county jail for a week. They make it capital.
Now, at this time, Wendy's still in the picture.
Yes.
You have an attorney. What is your attorney saying? Because if you're looking at the situation and just two people say, hey, that's the guy that did it, to me, I would be like, that's a weak case. What are you doing? I need to get out of here.
And I'm thinking, the whole time I'm smiling, I got this whooped. I know I didn't commit it. There's no evidence but these two clowns. And we go to trial. The trial lasts 7 weeks. My mom sit behind me the whole time. Every day she was in that courtroom with me. Every single day she was in there. Wendy came down from New Jersey with Christina. At this point, they're living back up in New Jersey. They come down for the trial. 7 weeks this trial goes on. And I get a hung jury.
And for those who are watching, a hung jury means what?
I had 4 not guilty, 4 guilty of second degree, 4 guilty of first degree.
Okay.
So they couldn't agree. So I'm sent back to Raleigh to sit in the penitentiary there. And I'm waiting, and an old black man who had come off of death row got a new trial, and he was sitting in there. Never talked to anybody. But the first morning I got back from my trial, because it was all over the news, he said, Mike, get your tray and come sit down. So I got my tray, I went and sat down. I was surprised that this guy was even talking. He said, you listen to me now. With a death sentence, you get 4 appeals. With a life sentence, you only get 1. And nobody gets out on that 1 appeal. It's very rare for someone to get out. Because it just don't work. So I'm thinking about this. Takes me another year to get back in the courtroom again for another trial. This one lasts 7 weeks also. And I don't know how it happened. I still to this day don't know. I don't know. But it was a guilty verdict. Okay?
They gave you a guilty verdict with really they can't really place you at the scene of the crime.
They said there was a stamp next to the body, a Reggie Jackson collector stamp, because this guy had memorabilia. There was a stamp next to the body, and they said my DNA was on that stamp. If my DNA was on that stamp, I did the murder. End of story. I can't argue it. They told the jury this. The jury convicted me. I had the cop get on the stand and say, that's the man that was in the school. I watched him. He was a resource officer. I know it's him. I remember the tattoos. They didn't believe him.
Wow.
They went for this stamp story. I get to death row. No, let me back up. When I'm found guilty, I stand up in the courtroom and I said, Your Honor, at this time, I have two attorneys. Wendy paid well over $100,000 for these attorneys. I said, at this point, get them away from me. The DA jumps up and says, no. We have to do the sentencing phase. I told him just like this is in the newspaper. I got the document. I said, look it, clown, I'm going to do it. You guys had your doctors tell you that I was good enough to go to trial. Well, I'm going to trial. I'm going to represent myself during the sentencing phase. And the DA saying, no, that's suicide by jury. I said, that's what it's supposed to be. The judge said, what are you doing, Mr. Ryan? I said, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. I'm going to make you give me the death sentence. Because a life sentence, what they're going to do, I end up with a life sentence. I don't have a chance of one appeal. Death sentence, I get 4 appeals. I need that. I'm on my 3rd appeal when I finally did walk out. I needed this. It was a gamble that I took, and I had to do it. And I told my mom, I heard her right behind me. I told my mom the night before that I would do this if they came back, and I heard her take a deep breath. I said, don't worry, Mom, I got this. I got this. The judge said, okay, you can do the sentencing phase. They did that. As I'm sitting in there with no attorney at this point, and they let me present my case, I just threw my history on the table. And I said, there it is. You see, I've been in the worst prisons in the nation, and I've made it. No problem. But I want you to look at page number 2. I got an escape from the penitentiary. So you know it can happen. It took them 46 minutes to come back with a death sentence. I was moved directly to death row. In my mind, I'm going to be off with these appeals. I'll be off in a year. The first guy I met was a guy named Eddie B. He walked up to me, shook my hand. He said, man, I've been here 30 years. I said, oh, Lord. My heart dropped. I thought, I'm in trouble now.
Now,
this is the moment of reflection. You going through all this, but what was going on with you emotionally? Because I know what sitting in county jails can do, but I don't know what being sentenced to death row can do. I mean, that has to be another level of anxiety, another level of worry.
It took a second. I know I asked them to give me this sentence because I needed the appeals. So I figured I had it whooped. And I still, on the trip, it's usually a 3.5 hour trip. They had me on death row in 2 hours. But when I got on death row, things started changing. I'm listening to the other stories. Some of these people have been here for years.
and what is prison life like day to day? Because like Elmo was saying, there's a normal process that person goes through reception and then they're released onto the yard. I'm sure that's not the same when you're facing death row.
Death row is a different ball game. It's when I walked on the row, I walked in the cell block. There was 12 guys on the bottom tier, 12 guys on the top tier. You're single cell. You're with the worst of the worst. A lot of guys are trying to fight for themselves. A lot of guys think it's a game. They don't care. You know, I woke up the first morning on death row and the whole bottom part of my mouth was black and blue from me biting on my lip all night. Stressed out. Did I make the right decision? I told my wife, I told Wendy, listen, I'm about 6 months into it now. And all hope is pretty much draining out of me. And I told Wendy, you got to go live your life. And she never went nowhere. She stayed with me for the full 17 years. I bought all the books. I bought all the legal books. I was going to study the law. I was going to do the things. Everything was going to be, I could do this. I could do this. I could do this. Nothing was working. Slowly winding down. About 4 years into it, I'm a basket case now. Nothing is going right. Everything that I tried to do wasn't working. But I watched. You watch everything when you're in prison. I watched, and I seen some dudes that were at peace with this, and I couldn't understand how they were doing it. And I asked George Wilkinson, come talk to me. And this was a man who had a couple murders, who knew he was done, but he was content. You could see the glow about him, and I didn't know how he was doing this. And it was that Bible. And I asked him, please come talk to me. Him and another man. And they came. And George Wilkinson bought me a Bible, and I still have it to this day. And he sat down and he spent time with me, and he talked to me. And this went on for a while. And now I'm talking to God in the cell, and I'm getting answers back, but I'm not sure if this is God talking to me or if this is just in my head. April 20th, about 3:30 in the afternoon, I'm on my knees in my cell asking God to come into my life. Please help me. Help me. Help me. I've tried everything that I wanted to do. I've spent hundreds of dollars for law books that didn't amount to nothing. I can't do it no more, Lord. You got to take the reins. Things were a little more peaceful. I was sleeping better at night. First off, I didn't have any more problems that the jailhouse getting involved with this nonsense and that. I don't care about the backbiting over here. You pull away from that. You don't have that no more. Now I can focus on reading the Word and trying to apply it to my life that I see it. Now there's still things that are probably wrong. Me and you could read the Bible and you'll interpret reading this one way and I'll interpret it the other. And I argued with George over this because it said in there, you would rather put a millstone around your neck than mess with one of my little ones. So now I'm still, these guys have killed babies and kids in there. If I got the opportunity, I would still do something. And that's what I explained to him. And he said, no, you can't do that. You have to let all that go. And that's where I had my problems.
And how long was it between the time that you were on death row to that true transformation period had happened?
How old were you, sir?
At this point, I'm 54, 55. I'd been on the road 4 years when I talked to him, when I initially talked to him about the Bible. It took probably another 18 months for me to really sit back and let everything go. It was hard to let everything go, and I had to.
You're at a point now where you've turned things around spiritually. You have this relationship. How long after this transformation period, which you said was about, 4 years into death row, until you finally got this appeal taken care of?
I got a letter from the lawyers, and they told me I have a court date, which don't happen on death row. They don't want to move death row inmates ever. I got a court date that I have to be there. So they come at 2 o'clock in the morning, chain me up, drive me across the state, 2 cars. We get in front of the judge. The judge listens to the argument. Remember the DNA about the stamp? When you get to death row, you get 2 attorneys to investigate your whole case to make sure they're executing the right person. There never was DNA on that stamp. They lied to the jury. The judge looked at this and he seen how big this was, and he didn't want no part of it. So he set another court date. I was taken back to death row. I sat on death row for another year. I go back again. Now this hearing is a 2-week hearing called an MAR, where they look at the new evidence. That came out about the DNA. Phone records of me talking to Wendy from the school showed that there's no way I was there, that I was on the phone. So the judge said, and now I'm in there, I'm thinking, man, I got it made. This is all good. The judge announces after 13 days in the courtroom, the whole time I'm housed in this county jail from death row. So they're not letting me, I'll get out to a shower and I'm back in the cell. That's it. There's no phones on death row, so we never get to talk to Wendy on the phone. The judge announced, I'm not going to make a decision at the end of this hearing. I'll make it at a later date. So I'm taken back to death row, pretty much air out of me. I mean, he's not going to let me out. 2 weeks later, 8 o'clock at night, they call my name and tell me to roll up my stuff. I don't understand what's going on at this point.
And how many years have you have done at this point?
7 years and 2 months on the row. 3 years at the county jail fighting the case. So 10 years at this point. The judge granted me a new trial. He didn't want to release me. I don't know why. He granted me a new trial. So I go back to the county jail. I'm in the county jail. They don't really want to let me out of the cell. It takes them about 30 days to start letting me mingle with other people. A couple of the cops remember me from before, so they start letting me out to clean. And I asked the main jailer, the sheriff, I said, man, let me be a trustee. He said, I can't. Your custody's too high. But the jailers are still letting me out work. About 90 days into it, he comes in there and says, Mike, you proved a lot of people wrong. I'm going to change the policy in the jail. Now anybody can be a trustee. So now I'm a trustee and I'm working. This goes on for 7 years. I sit in that county jail waiting for a new trial that never came. 5 months ago, they came to me. 5 months and 2 weeks ago today, they came to me and said, you either wait 3 more years for a trial, and I've been in there 7 now, or you take this deal. And you walked out. I broke down and took their deal. Broke down and took their deal. You know what I mean?
And what was the deal?
Alpha plea. I didn't admit to no murder. I took an alpha plea, which I'm not admitting anything. Just that you guys have some, and they let me go. I'm out.
Praise God.
My wife had done, she works for Marriott, had done some group stuff with the Lord's Place. She met them. When I got out, I couldn't walk in Walmart or being around people. That was hard. She took me to the Lord's Place. I met a lady named Miss King. I told Wendy when we pulled in the parking lot, I said, this ain't gonna work. She said, give it a shot. I met Miss King. Half hour into the interview, I said, it's gonna work. That night, she hooked me up with David, who hooked me up with Elmo, right here, and Jack Brewer. These people took me in with open arms. I go in every day. I work with them every single day, passing out food, picking up food. My wife says, I don't want you working. I don't want you to do anything. Stay with this group because they're good for you. And it's working. Sure, I have some bad days, but I try to keep going. God took complete control of my life. I'm out. I had a death sentence. I'm on the streets right now.
And you're doing more than just, I know you mentioned passing out food and giving out food, but I've been there to the pantry. I've been there with Elmo. You guys are serving how many families on an average week?
At least 500 a week.
500 families without food.
And these people will tell you they love Mike.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I'm right there in the midst of every one of them. I love it. Elmo and Jack and his wife took me to Colorado. Me and Elmo drove to Tennessee for a week. Met some amazing people. So even at your worst of your worst, don't give up. First and foremost, you've got to trust God. There's no other answer. And I would have told you years ago, nah, that's look where I'm at. Less than 1% in the United States walk off death row to the streets. And here I am.
Amen.
I want to add some I guess some meat to the bone of actually what Mike does at the foundation. So you left out, you pick the kids up and take them to school in the morning.
I pick them up, I go to their homes, I pick everyone up, get them on a prayer group in the morning on the way to school. They do roll call, all these young kids, and then at the end of that, I get one of them to say, give us an inspirational quote for the day, and they will. These kids are amazing. I drop them off at school, and then I go and make my rounds and pick up probably 4,000 or 5,000 pounds of meat every day. Today I picked up 51 boxes of food and took it to the center and then shot up here. You know what I mean?
And then Thursday you went and picked up from Farm Share.
Farm Share.
You picked up 5 pallets of food.
Unload that.
And that allows us to feed anywhere from 200 to 300 other families. And I'm saying all this because most guys get out of jail and they get on the wheel. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do this. When all along our sole purpose is to do what Jesus did, and that was to serve.
Amen.
So when you come out of jail or you come out of prison or even if you haven't been to jail or you haven't been anywhere, your primary calling is to serve. And you came out ready to serve. Mike is a volunteer. There's nobody paying Mike. There's no extra this. There's no extra that. So he could be doing anything and say, hey, I need to catch up with everybody else. And there are other guys like you, there are other guys like myself and other men and women like in this room that our desire is to serve our community. But it's rare that you would see somebody that has had that much hardship, because I guarantee you, if I had experienced everything that you've experienced, I probably would be one of those guys that gave up. So I'm hoping today this podcast would just not only inspire just a few people, but a whole new generation about what we're called to do. Our calling is to serve. Our purpose is to be like Jesus Christ. That's our purpose.
Amen.
Thank you, brother. And you, who love you? You know I love you.
Big Mo.
Amen.
You have been listening to the Death or Prison podcast, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. I am Johnny Branham. To my right, Mr. Elmo Golden. You have been listening to the phenomenal testimony. Thank you, Mike Ryan, for sharing your testimony, for sharing that inspiration. I know there are many people being blessed by you stepping into doing what you're doing. So thank you again for what you're doing. So this is the Death or Prison podcast, but we say choose life.
I can change the world. Feed one, teach one.